So, pardon the lighting, but who cares? Here's my video on zero reserve lending, which is basically the greatest crime that ever happened in the history of Canada. It is the greatest theft performed by any number of people in the history of this country, okay? So, as a quick introduction, if you go into a grocery store or a retail store and try and steal $50 worth of stuff from the store, you will get hounded by security, called on by the police, probably get a criminal record, taken to the police station, and everything imaginable, fingerprinted and branded as a criminal with a criminal record for the rest of your life for trying to steal an Apple or, a silly iPhone from Best Buy. You will basically get treated like the scum of the earth, because you tried to steal something. Well, guess who has been stealing hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars every single day from Canadians for a long time now? This is not a joke, this is real. All of the banks in Canada. Period. It is the greatest act of thievery that still is going on as I speak in the history of this country. It is called zero reserve lending, also known as mortgages. And but it's pure thievery, folks. It is and bigger thievery than any theft that ever happens anywhere in this country. Period. And it's been going on for an awful long time. So it's not hard to explain how it works. Okay. It's quite insane. It's totally corrupt. It's 100% sinful, and it's pure theft is what it is. Zero reserve lending, okay, means that the banks don't have to have any physical cash on site at any of their branches anywhere, but they can create magical, empty, non-existent money out of thin air as a loan for you, usually to buy a house. They call it a mortgage, but it's all the same. It's a debt for anything. And they charge you a hefty amount of interest on that loan. So, for them to make the greatest theft they can from you, they want the loan to be as big as possible. And that is why housing prices and anything that can be purchased with a loan from a bank in this country is absolutely insane. The housing prices in Canada are absolutely insane. And it's all because of this creation by the bankers called zero reserve lending. Period. It is one evil law, together with the evil practice of loaning money at interest, period, which is anti-biblical as well, yada, 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 in order for these cronies to, they have successfully robbed, and I mean robbed, and I mean robbed, and I mean thievery, and I mean criminal, like crime, like stolen, from more Canadians in this country in the history of this nation. And perhaps the history of most nations of the world. So, the greatest sinners and the greatest thieves in Canada, or that have their fingers somewhere in Canada, who knows, they probably live and travel the world in luxury airliners with all the profits and all the sickening money they take. But it's all the people who own the banks in Canada, or have shares in the banks in Canada, or who work for the banks in Canada, and then you also throw into the bin of sinners in this whole game anyone who participates, okay? Including real estate agents who are just cronies in the system and servants of these evil people. Quite frankly, people who signed up for mortgages and hose a whole bunch of renters into the game in order to prop up this entire beast, and on it goes. The federal government, who allowed this law and practice to be enacted, it's actually written in the acceptable federal law of Canada that zero reserve lending is the official approved practice of banking in Canada, which is completely insane. It is the greatest. It is literally the greatest. Hey, you guys can steal as much money as you stinking can from as many Canadians as you can. Go. That's literally what zero reserve lending is. And the moment it got signed into law in this country, all the bankers knew that they were going to take as much money, also known as real labor and goods and services, and property, you name it, from all the Canadians like never before in the history of the universe. It's the greatest crime in this country, and it's going on today. Okay? So, that's why I'm making this video. Because people need to wake up. I mean, the average Canadian, knows full well that they have an insane mortgage. It's been stressing them out their whole lives, and they know that all these prices are insane, but they don't know why. And they don't know who's to blame, and they don't understand the sin behind it, and they don't understand how evil it is, and they don't understand that it's not supposed to be this way. It was never supposed to be this way, and it is complete, total sin. Okay? And it should be absolutely punished, and all the rest of it. Okay? And there's a very easy solution for the whole thing. Okay, it's called you're not allowed zero reserve lending or fractional reserve lending. Ideally, as the Bible says, you're not allowed to loan any money at interest. Okay, that is actually what God wants and what keeps all people free. Quite frankly, okay, all the currency authorized by the government of Canada, which is owned by the citizens of Canada, that is what a democracy is, owned by the people, people rule, okay? That physical currency has to exist at any institution that provides you with a loan for that physical currency in order for you to make a temporary purchase that you pay them back for, and that's what you call the prevention of, oh my gosh, I mean, the word inflation doesn't even come close to this thievery. It is clinical theft by the hundreds of millions of dollars, which translates into physical human labor. And just now, all of a sudden, the average family is so strapped. Like, it's just oh my gosh. And then renters get hosed like no other. Everyone's angry at each other because of how cruel this game is and how this creates such a psychopathic, just insanely stressful, competitive, all debt, just locks people into stress and anxiety, and it's not God's will. Anyways, the whole thing is sin, okay? Zero reserve lending. Like, it's just... it's just so wicked. It's the greatest crime in Canada by far. And all the bankers behind it, and all the politicians, okay, that have worked for the Canadian government ever since this law was put into place, have all been sinners. Every one of them, including the current government. That is the truth, okay, because this zero reserve lending has stolen more from all Canadians than any other crime in the history of this country. Big time, by a factor of thousands. Period. Okay? So, it's like, it's totally disgusting, and this needs to be completely overhauled, undone, and made righteous. Because quite frankly, everyone who is aware of this is totally pissed off. Everyone is extremely angry. People have been so angry and stressed out for so long, many of them not totally knowing why, okay, with just insane housing prices, unbelievable, just renters galore in slavery, and these bankers have taken it all, okay? And Canadians need to rise up with one voice and be pissed and demand that zero reserve lending and everyone behind it be brought to an end, okay? That's it. I'm like, you can research for yourself what zero reserve lending is and put the pieces together in your mind as to why it is so evil and why it makes total slaves out of every single person that jumps into a loan with a bank in Canada. It is essentially pure thievery from banker towards loanee every single time. In short, bankers and all the people who own them do absolutely zero in life except steal money from Canadians. And not small amounts of money, huge. Like, I mean, huge. Okay? It's the biggest crime. It's the biggest act of thievery going on in Canada by a factor of like hundreds of thousands, millions. Okay? So I just, it's quite unbelievable to me how, we have like little security guards and little grocery stores and like little security cameras and little retail outlets, and we have police officers that, chase down a guy, stealing something from a store. And guys, there's hundreds of millions of dollars being stolen from Canadians every single day. And no one is talking about this. Why? Because the entire federal government is corrupt and totally in sin. Do you see how, when a government rejects Jesus Christ, they are total liars. And there is nothing but corruption and bribery and money thievery going on in secret conversations behind closed doors. Okay? And I just, quite frankly, this is so disgusting that more people need to be talking about this, preaching against it. I can't believe that Christians don't preach against this. I just can't believe how ignorant the average person is. Okay? Anyone who signs up with a stupid mortgage is just feeding this beast and joining in with these sickening thieves. And yes, all real estate agents are thieves and servants of this sin and cronyhood and sinners in this country, because the whole thing is 100% thievery and 100% corrupt. Okay? It is the very definition of what thievery is. One or more groups of people taking huge amounts of stuff from other people while doing absolutely nothing. That is the very definition of a thief. And it's huge. Like, not someone stealing from the local grocery store and a security guard being displeased and, them getting a criminal record for trying to take something from Best Buy or the grocery store. That's pathetic. No, I'm talking the biggest crime in the history of this country, if not the world. Like hundreds of millions of dollars. Like people's entire lives in slavery because of these bankers in bed with the federal government and all that has been implemented in zero reserve lending and what that has done to Canadians across the land and anywhere in the world where this exists. Okay? Allow me to briefly summarize what I've already said what zero reserve lending is. Banks across Canada don't have to have any physical Canadian cash in any of their branches anywhere. They can just create a loan for you out of thin air. It's called digital currency, not real currency. It's not at all related to the amount of physical dollars authorized by the government. Okay. And then that digital loan that they create for you as a person attempting, to buy, a home here in this country, they create a digital loan out of thin air, charge you a huge amount of interest on the loan, and they sign you up for X number of years in order to pay it back with interest, which is nothing more than just pure thievery and pure labor of your life given to them for free. But did you notice that they don't even have to have a single Canadian dollar in their banking company in any branch anywhere in order to just create an infinite number of loans that aren't even real money, but they they get you to sign a contract saying, hey, we've given you this loan, we've created the digital money out of thin air, we've added a huge amount of exorbitant interest to the loan that you have to pay us back in true, actual, daily, hourly, timely spent labor in your precious life, taking you away from other things like love with your children, and thanks for all the free money, thanks for all the free labor, we're taking everything from you, and we don't do anything in this country except collect. And it's big. It's not small collection. It's like hundreds of millions of dollars translating into real human labor collection across this country. It's been going on ever since zero reserve lending and even fractional reserve lending were implemented and allowed in by the government of Canada, who is completely in bed with these bankers 100%. They are all in bed with each other. They're all money worshippers, and this whole thing needs to be exposed and brought down. And until you get a federal government in Canada that acknowledges, until you get a prime minister, a federal government in Canada that acknowledges this sin and corruption for what it is and how it has hurt and damaged Canadians for so long, there is no righteous leadership in this country at all. The biggest beast in the room and the greatest crime in the history of this nation has not been manifest. It has not been revealed. It's been hidden, and all of these people have just taken everything they can from you. And mark my words, once they quit their dumb job in politics in Canada and take that huge lump sum of money that they've stockpiled from this country, they have every intention of just gallivanting the world and doing their pleasure with insane amounts of stuff that they have stolen from this country with no concern about what happens in this land. Period. Okay? Okay, so there you go. I've briefly talked about the biggest crime, okay, in the history of Canada. It's all the bankers. Every bank in this country. Everyone. All of them. All sinners. All thieves. The way that they have pulled off the greatest theft in the history of the nation is through zero reserve lending. And that has allowed them to create the most insane house prices in the history of the universe that are not even closely related to the amount of physical Canadian currency in circulation in this country, attached to whatever amounts of interest they have pegged to these huge values. They don't care that much. It's just all total free money for them, free labor from you to them, day and night. And it's all fake because it's called zero reserve lending. They don't have to have any money on hand at their banking institutions, but they have just signed you up for a loan with interest that says, hey, you have to give real money to us from real labor. And by the way, we didn't give you anything. And by the way, the prices are so insanely high because I've already talked about it. Oh, it's and and so all the real estate agents in Canada are sinners. Any person who is in bed with the bankers with multiple mortgaged properties that they have hooked renters up to in order to pay the mortgage off while they have plans to transfer the property to, someone else in the future, or just collect free labor from renters as much as they can and just keep staying in bed with the banks while, other people do real service in this country. It's the greatest crime. It's the biggest crime in the history of the nation by a factor of gazillions. And as long as no one in the government of this country talks about this, They are all liars and all fakes and all sinners completely. And guess what? They have secret plans to take all the money that they get from this country, and as soon as they disappear from the political scene, they're gallivanting the world in luxury travel and spending the money on whatever they please, in all godlessness and wickedness. And it's all stolen goods from this country and the working class. Period. Okay? Yeah. That's it. That's exactly what's going on. Okay? That's it. I mean, you would have... These people are all sinners that are all far from God, because, you know, if you're close to God like I am, you recognize that this zero reserve lending behavior and enactment and what it performed by banks and bankers across this country from the day it was legalized has literally been the greatest criminal act, you know, in the history of this country. And if you're a man of righteousness and a man of enlightenment and of justice and intelligence, you have to call this out for what it is and demand that this be reformed as quickly as possible before God Almighty, who wants righteousness in this country. Ay. Okay. I think I've talked about enough. Okay. If you want to go further down the rabbit hole and do the detective work for yourself, and research when zero reserve lending was implemented legally in this country, who was behind it, who the politicians have been, you know, in this country since then, yada, 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 go ahead. Okay, just... okay. It's the greatest crime and theft in the history of this country, and there are a ton of people involved in it. A ton, okay? From the bankers to the shareholders of banks, to the people who work for banks, to the real estate agents, to the federal government of Canada, to people who have jumped into bed with bankers and signed up for mortgage properties and brought renters into contracts to service this evil beast. Everyone is a sinner in the greatest corrupt act and law implementation of all time in this country. So, if you don't hear someone talking about this, they are so far from God and all righteousness, it is ridiculous.